You know, the only thing that makes us feel good long-term is living life at our level. I remember I met years ago John Wooden, the UCLA basketball coach, the winningest coach of all time in college basketball history. He won 11 out of 12 national championships, NCAA championships, and he won 7 in a row. I mean, the most anybody else has won in a row is 3 in a row of national championships. Now, this guy was a genius, and I'll tell you, he won more than anybody, but he didn't focus on winning. He focused on getting guys to tell the truth. He focused on eliminating rationalization. And the way he did it is he said, here's a real simple thing I want you men to know. At the end of every game, only you will know whether you really won or lost. And it will not be based on the points on the board. Because there's sometimes when you play nowhere near your potential and you beat the other team just because they're terrible or because you got lucky. And if you got more points on the board, but you didn't give your all, you're a loser. Because in life, what you give, you get to keep. What you fail to give, you lose forever. He said, if at the end of the day, you got fewer points on the board, but you gave every ounce of your soul on that court, you know you can walk away the winner because they may have been lucky. They may have had more skill. They may have had a better team, but they didn't get more out of themselves. Winning and losing in life is an internal game, and it comes from telling yourself the truth. And if you do that, if every day you demand more from yourself than other people would expect, you give your all, you're going to end up most often with more points on the board than the other team. So we gotta tell ourselves the truth, and we can't use softeners. You can't say, well, I'm a little overweight, you know, or I'm a bit robust. No, your butt is bigger than Chicago. You're fat. Tell yourself the truth, because until you do that, you have no reason to change. So the reason people don't change, number one, they're out of practice. Number two, they rationalize, they tell stories, they use softeners, they lie to themselves. Third reason is they got an ineffective strategy. Some people, they're willing to go for it, and they're not even rationalizing, but, you know, they're running east looking for a sunset. And I don't care how positive you are. I don't care how committed you are. I don't care how your standards are. If you got a strategy that doesn't work, you got a problem. And let me tell you, the number one thing that doesn't work for people, since our first focus here to get an extraordinary life and extraordinary psychology is getting an extraordinary body, right? And if you're gonna have that extraordinary body, you gotta have this time to make it strong every day. Increase that metabolism. Feel that feeling of power and passion in your body. But you know what most people do? They want to look good, and so their primary strategy is change their diet, and they do that alone. Diet alone is never going to give you the level of health you deserve. It's a critical component, but diet alone is not enough, because what happens when you diet? Well, a very simple thing occurs. As soon as you start to diet, what are you doing? You're depriving yourself. Well, as soon as you deprive yourself, guess what happens? The body's not getting as much, so it starts to use some of the fat built inside of you, and sure enough, you start to lose weight, step 2. But after you deprive yourself and lose weight for a while, there's a point when you get sick of depriving yourself, so what do? You binge, step 3. And when you binge, what happens? You gain back the same weight, usually a few pounds more, because when you go on a diet where you're limiting your calories, one simple thing occurs. The body knows it has to conserve its energy. So what it does is it gets better at storing fat. So when you finally go to eat, your metabolism is dropped. It takes less food for you to gain fat faster. That's why 5 days out of the week, you gotta have your hour of power. You're out there moving, exercising, sweating at least to level 7 so you get that energy up. That's why you wanna build some muscle in your body. That's why it's critical. Don't you deserve to create the rituals that for a lifetime will give you the health, the vitality, the energy you deserve? You won't get it by rationalizing. You won't get it by softening. You get it by telling yourself the truth and getting your butt in gear, but also at making a strategy that works. Now, by the way, let me tell you why most people don't make the change besides the rationalization. They get hooked in another pattern. And that pattern is they get in what I call the pressure cooker. The pressure cooker is, here's what occurs. People don't change, don't change, don't change. So things get worse, 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 worse until finally it gets so bad, you gotta change. And what makes it so bad is you get so much pain. One day, you can't pick up your own telephone calls because you're afraid it's gonna be a bill collector. You know, you get to the point where you can't get your butt to squeeze in the regular class seat on the airplane without having your ability to breathe impaired. You know, something occurs that finally pushes you over the edge. You go, not another day, not another moment. You get so much pain, step 1, that you take step 2, you take action. Now, when you take action, you go to step 3, you get results. You start to lose weight, as an example. When you start to lose weight, step 4 happens. The pain reduces. When the pain reduces, step 5 happens. You lose your drive. When you lose your drive, step 6 happens. You stop taking action at the same level. And when you stop taking action at the same level, the final step occurs, step 7, you go right back to where you started from. This is the pressure cooker. And then people do it again and again and again. The way to avoid the pressure cooker is to walk yourself through the 7 steps of conscious change. And these 7 steps we want to use right now so that you really implement your hour of power, so you keep that advantage to your life, you keep that edge, but also so you get that extraordinary experience of connection with yourself, that time with yourself. Also, these would be the same 7 steps you'll go through to make a dietary change. So let's get to them real fast. Here they are. They're really simple. Number 1, get disturbed. Now you might say, get disturbed? That doesn't sound like a very sweet first step, Tony. Well, it isn't sweet, but it works. Because we can't possibly change unless we get ourselves disturbed enough that we're going to do something about it. What it really means is get honest with yourself. Don't use any softeners. Don't use any rationalizations. Don't compare yourself to other people so you can feel okay. Don't compare how you used to be and say, look, I used to be worse, so it's not that bad. All those things will steal away your drive. See, if you really wanted to get disturbed and you feel like you're overweight, then rip off your clothes right now and look in a full-length mirror, and then turn around and look at the parts that you never want to see. You know, the parts that are scaring the family? Come on, let's be honest here. You know, you've got to see this stuff, and you got to be truthful, don't you? Because if you're not truthful with yourself, you can never have the energy to change. You got to get disturbed. You finally say, no more, not another minute, not another day. If you're not willing to go for the full naked approach, you could put on some clothes that you used to wear and look in the mirror and feel the tightness. See, anything that can make you move. Now you say, well, my problem is not overweight, Tony. Then look at what you're missing out on because you haven't followed through, because you haven't made the decision, because you haven't spent the time with your kids, because you haven't been there having some date nights or some special time with the person you love. Get associated to the problem before it gets out of control. Make it worse than it even is if you need to get disturbed, because you need to get yourself to take action, don't you? You wouldn't have thought of something you wanted to change unless there was something about it that wasn't good enough. And the challenge is just getting yourself to get something visceral, something that'll move you. But if you're not disturbed, you're not going to change. It's that simple. And most of us, when we get disturbed, what do we do immediately? We immediately placate ourselves. We immediately try and get rid of the pain. Pain is your friend if you don't just live there, if you use it for drive. See, there's a reason you begin this pain. It's a signal to your nervous system saying, this isn't working, you must do something. But what we do is we pop an aspirin or a drug or smoke a cigarette or eat some more food or distract ourselves with TV. We find some drug of choice that's acceptable in society or in our peer group, and we kill the pain, and therefore we kill the drive. Drive is your friend. You will only have drive if you are disturbed. Get disturbed by getting really clear with yourself. When you have hunger, you'll move forward. I don't mean physical hunger. I mean a hunger for something deeper and richer. Hunger only happens by getting disturbed. Now, here's another way to get disturbed, not just look at how bad it is. Get around where it's better. Get around people that are playing life at a higher level, where they are really physically fit, they're strong, they're energetic, they're passionate, they're fun, they got a great relationship. Because seeing that will also disturb you, because you won't be able to separate the fact that your life is not like that. You can try to rationalize all you want, but the more you're around people who are playing life at the highest level, the more disturbed you'll get. You'll either run back to your friends so you can feel good about your life compared to them, or you'll join a new peer group. You want to be good at tennis, you got to play somebody better than you are, which is disturbing. And it creates drive, and it makes you have to get better. Play somebody who's worse than you are, there's nothing disturbing about that. It's boring, it's not disturbing. And staying where you are is boring, so you got to get disturbed. Now, if all you do is get disturbed and get all stirred up, that's not going to be really good, and after a while you're going to want to escape that. So you got to turn that feeling of being disturbed into drive, and the way you do that is while you're disturbed, step 2, you make a real decision. And that decision requires that you not only decide just what to do. Some people get disturbed about, let's say, their body and say, okay, I'm going to run 22 miles. They make a decision. But that's not what they want. They don't want to run 22 miles. That's the game plan. See, everyone who's successful has what I call an RPM plan. This is what we teach in the time of your life. An RPM plan means a plan that has 3 answers to 3 questions. Number 1, they know what result they're after. That's what the R is. They know what they want. The result, the specific result they're committed to. I've never met a successful person who doesn't know what they want, because your chances of suddenly bumping into what you want without knowing what it is are slim and none. Number 2, they know their purpose, which means they know why they want it. If you want something, I want $1 million. I want, 12% body fat. I want, this great relationship. Well, that's wonderful, but that's a should. What makes it a must is when you have enough reasons to make it happen no matter what. Enough purpose behind it. Purpose has power. You can't just know what it is you want. You don't know why you want it, the purpose for it. And the M is you need a massive action plan. And a massive action plan means lots of ways to get the job done. Because if you say I'm gonna run 20 miles and then you get to about 3 and you can't go another step, and then all of a sudden you're tight as heck, now you're gonna go, well, I can't run. Well, your purpose, your outcome was not to run. The result you're after wasn't running. It was to lose 20 pounds. It was to be energetic. It was to have your energy increased. So you're focusing on something you can't do instead of saying, I can lose the weight still because I must. Here's why, and here's my plan. Okay, I'll swim. The running didn't work, I'll swim. I'll walk, I'll do this. There are a million ways. You need a massive action plan. So get disturbed and then make a decision about what you want and why you want it. What's your ultimate vision? What's your ultimate purpose? So let's try this with you right now. Let's get honest. Let's take a moment right now. What is it in your life that is not good enough, and if you're honest, is really disgusting? You go, Tony, what's disgusting in my life? Thank you very much. Nothing. My life is perfect. Bull. Nobody's life is perfect if they're healthy. I mean, think about it. Anybody who's honest has a gap in their life between where they are and where they want to be in some area. If your body's perfect, then you don't have enough time. If your time is perfect, then you don't know your children. If your children are perfect, then your finances are screwed up. Come on, it's part of being human. So honest people can look at the gap, and because they can look at it, they can close the gap between where they are and where they want to be quickly. But you know what? As soon as you close it, you'll just create another one because you'll raise your standards. That's what life's about, right? So let's get honest. Right now, what's disturbing? I want you to turn this disc off, and I want you to do 2 things. I want you to write down, number 1, what, if you're honest, are you unhappy about? In your career, in your business, in yourself, in your rationalizations? Is it a habit of eating? Is it emotion? Is it not taking time for yourself? What's something that's disturbing? And then step number 2, what do you want? Don't just stay disturbed. You're right, that won't feel good. Get disturbed so you have the energy to make change a must and not a should. Write it down. What is it you're really tired of, you're sick of, you're gonna change now? And then step 2, make a decision. Write down what you really want now. What are you gonna do instead? The result I'm committed to doing instead is this. I'm gonna feel this way. I'm gonna change my state. I'm gonna stop telling my story. I'm gonna schedule this time with my kids or with myself. I'm gonna work out. I'm gonna hire a trainer tomorrow. Make a decision. That's where all the power is. Don't just say something like, I wanna make more money. Fine, here's $1, get out of here. Don't say I wanna lose some weight. Fine, lose a pound and get out of here. You've gotta be specific about what it is that's disturbing you, why it's disturbing you, and then secondly, write down what are you committed to now and why. Then turn me back on. Go, do it right now. Don't you keep listening to me. Turn this off. I don't care if you're in the car. You can still do this. Come on, turn it off. This is about taking action. You don't get the edge by talking and listen. You get the edge by doing. Let's do it. Come back to me when you're done. Bye. Okay, welcome back. Now, what did you learn and what did you experience? I had some people here in the studio while we're doing this tape. I asked them to do the homework and see what experience that they've had. They said it was a bit painful. I hope it was for you because, 2 things drive us in life, pain and pleasure. And what you're really doing in this process is by discovering what disturbs you is you're tapping into the power of pain when it's used intelligently, when it's used with your capacity to create drive. Remember, if you don't get disturbed by anything, something that's undisturbed is not going to move. It's certainly not going to make it through the obstacles that are necessary to achieve something of significant value for your life. So once you do that, though, you don't want to just be disturbed, as I said. You've got to now focus on, okay, this is not good enough. That's good. That creates energy. Now that it's not good enough, what do you want? Because if you stay focused on what you don't do, what you're not following through on, what you're unhappy about, then all you'll do is continue to rotate through the emotion that makes you disempowered. So you got to get clear on the result and get as specific as possible and then know why you're going to follow through, why it's a must. Now let's take a couple of examples, typical things that I hear and some things that we actually heard here in the studio as well. One person here said there were actually 2 things that were disturbing him. He said the first one is that he's got this great workout equipment. He spent all the money and all the energy to make sure he got the very best stuff. He configured it, organized it so that it was ready to go, but he just doesn't work out. The reason is he goes through all those things we talked about earlier, right? All the stories about he doesn't have time, I'll get to it tomorrow. I said, but what's really disturbing about it? So what's disturbing is that it's inconsistent with me as a person because I'm an achiever, I make things happen. And he said, I'm not following through. And he said, what's really disturbing, honestly, is I know I'm not doing it because I'm getting older and I realize I don't have the same capacity as I used to have. And I refuse to grow old, so rather than face the fact that maybe I'm lifting a little less or I have a little less aerobic capacity than I had before, I just kind of say, I'll do this tomorrow. Now, the truth of the matter is, to educate him or anybody else, they've been doing research over the last 10 years at several universities here in the United States where they're taking people who are in their mid-60s, people who have never worked out in their life, and training to lift weights as an example. And they're developing within these men and women in their 60s the same level of muscular strength as men and women in their 20s and 30s. So it may not be that you're getting old as much as you've gotten older, you've made less of a priority to use these muscles in a way that puts a significant demand on them. It's like osteoporosis. Research now, all the doctors now see that if you don't make demands on your bones, they get weaker, they don't get stronger. But the point of the matter is that's what was bothering him. And he said that what he really decided is he really is committed to working out on a consistent basis. And of course, he could make that more specific, 3 times a week, 2 times a week, because if he makes it general, he still won't achieve it. You won't have a way to measure whether you're making it or not. And then he said the why for him is he really, truly wants that sense of passion, that energy, that sense of vitality back in his life, and the sense that he's able to conquer things. Now, he said another thing that disturbed him, he was on a roll. He went for 2. He said the other thing was that he's been a songwriter for years, and he said 20 years ago, Johnny Mercer, the guy that wrote Moon River and some of those classic songs, is the person who told him, you write for the wastebasket. This is what made him successful. That instead of writing and trying to be perfect, which no one can be, and that keeps you from actually writing, you write just for the sake of writing, getting it out and knowing that whatever you get out, you're not going to judge it. It's designed for the wastebasket. And what that does, it gets momentum going. And then pretty soon you start to actually get results. So when he heard that, he said he acted upon it, but he did it for 6 weeks. It was the best songwriting of his career, and for 20 years he's been trying to get back to that. He said it's disturbing to think something so simple I've not followed through on. And I said, well, what do you want? He says, I want to make sure, and again, he said, I want to write more songs, but he wasn't specific. So the reason I'm bringing this up is, as you're looking at what you wrote down, remember, the reason we say not only what do you want, but we call it an RPM plan, is what is the specific result, the measurable result? How many times a week? How many pages? Something that you can actually measure, otherwise it's a vague dream that you won't follow through on. By the way, he said, throughout the day, he said, I have this vague feeling that like songs are ready to be born, but he said, I don't pick up the pen and paper. And he said, and I never even get pregnant. So this is a process. And I said, why do you want this? He said, because I am a songwriter. That's my purpose. That's what I'm about as a human being. And not to do this is not to be fully alive. So what have we got within this man? Well, we've got 2 areas of his life that he's disturbed about. And he said, it was painful to do this, but that's good. Because even though he said it's painful, it's interesting, his energy increased as he talked about it. And you can see as I'm talking right now, I can see him through the glass. He's kind of nodding his head. And, you can see him. He's like getting more committed. Because commitment comes because there's something sizable on the line, both pain if you don't follow through and pleasure if you do. Now we got to refine it. He's got an R and a P to his RPM plan. He knows the result. He knows the why. That'll give him drive. Now he's got to come up with a map. What's the massive action plan? What are the little and big things he can do immediately to get results? Because that's the 3rd step we're going to go through in these 7 steps to get yourself to create lasting change, lasting improvement. Whether it's getting you to do your hour of power or make a dietary change, you're going to have to get disturbed with what you're doing, and you're not going to change your diet. You're going to have to get yourself to make a decision about what you really want specifically and why you want it. So once you decide, the why will get you to follow through. And then step 3 is you've got to come up with a real plan. And that's what an RPM plan is, a very specific result, a very specific purpose that moves you. It doesn't matter how it sounds. Does it move you to action? Does it give you enough reasons, both positive and negative, to move? And you got a map, a plan to make that occur. But before you do your map, let's look at some other examples. Another person here in the studio is a gentleman that owns the studio, and he's a very successful man. And he said what's really disturbing to him is that he doesn't have enough time in his life. He said, I'm so busy working all the time because in my business, it's money and time are connected together. You either have a lot of time and no money or a lot of money and no time. And I think a lot of people can relate to this. And he said, so he realized this a long time ago, and he came up with a solution, which was to create some products so that he could make money while he slept. He said he's got 4 of those products that are 95% done. He said it would be so easy to just get them done and get them on the web. But he hasn't done it, and that disturbs him. I said, what really disturbs you about not having time? Because I want to find a deeper level of pain, something that'll move him. And he said, really, that my kids are growing up and that I'm so busy, I'm not really there to experience and enjoy them. And you could hear his whole tone change. I go, Robbins, why are you making him feel this kind of pain? What are you trying to depress him or something? No, we're trying to get to what's real. We're so busy covering up the things we're unhappy about or stuffing them down with food or alcohol or television set or more work that we never get to what matters to us. See, the only way you get real lasting change is you get down to what really matters to you personally. And that's okay if it's painful. You're not going to live there. You're just going to go there to find what's real. Does that make sense? I hope it does for you, because it's that self-honesty that makes all change possible. So I said, okay, great. What do you want? He said, well, I want to complete these 4 products. I said, okay, great. So now he's got a specific result. Now he's got to decide by when, right? Because he got to be a specific result. A specific result is what and by when. Otherwise, there's no way to measure it. And you can't manage something you can't measure, right? If it's too general, there's no way to get it. So he said, okay, I'm going to get these done by X time. And I said, why is it so important to you? He said, why? Because the status quo is driving me crazy. I said, well, there's a positive reason. And he said, but also because it'll be fun. It'll be fulfilling to get it done, and it'll give me my time. And what's great about what he gave is he gave reasons that are painful and pleasurable. Listen, we're all creatures that need to avoid pain, and we desire pleasure. Using those is being intelligent. Running around and pretending like there's nothing wrong or you're totally fulfilled and happy when you're not, it's called lying to yourself, deceiving yourself, and it eventually will bite you. It may look good for a while on the surface, but it will not fulfill you. Does that make sense? I've said this a couple times, haven't I? But that's because I want you to get it. I want you to think about it. I want you to hear me rant. I want you to own it if it makes sense to you. And if it doesn't, then throw it out. But I think if you look at it from your own life experience, you'll find this is true. So let's go to step number 3. Step number 3 is you got to create a real plan. Now, we've already begun that, because an RPM plan, and by the way, we call it RPM because RPM stands for the Rapid Planning Method. This is what I teach in the time of your life, and we teach it in companies, and we show people how to immediately, bam, produce a quick plan that people really follow through on. Because most people, when they do a plan, they think the job's over. But the truth is, when you got a plan, the job's begun. And the only way you're going to follow through is if you have absolute clarity of what you're after. Because along the way, a lot of actions you take aren't going to work. So if you think the action is the goal, like we said earlier, if you think running 20 miles is the goal rather than losing 20 pounds, well, then if something interferes with your ability to run, then you can't achieve the goal. You got to make sure you know what you're after, and you can change your approach to get there. And you got to know why you're after it, because when the going gets tough, the difference in following through or not is having enough reasons. Reasons come first, answers come second. If you get a big enough why to do something, big enough reasons, you can figure out how to do it. So you might want to juice up the result you wrote down, like this is what I'm after. Maybe be more specific, by when. And you might want to write a few more reasons, but then I want you to step 3. I want you to draw out a map. And when I say a map, I want it to be very simple and specific. Just write down anything first that you could do to achieve that goal. Instead of trying to be perfect again and saying, well, I got to do this first and then this and then this, that makes it hard. Just brainstorm. Anything you could do. When you're done with that map, you're going to asterisk the things that you think are musts. Meaning, you might come up with 10 or 15 things you could do to achieve that outcome. It's 10 or 15 steps. You might need to do them all, but I want you to asterisk the 2, 3, 4, 5 of them that you must do and that you can do, that are within your control, that would absolutely get you the result you're after. So you can have that sense of certainty that this is really going to happen. So I want you to do that right now. You can refine your result, put a deadline on it, add a few reasons, so you got a good strong purpose, and then do the M in RPM, the massive action plan. What specific actions are you going to take immediately to get this done? And by the way, I'll give you a clue. Write down little things you can do immediately. Because one of the beliefs I have is never, ever leave the sight of setting a goal without doing something towards its achievement. This is how you get momentum. If you get all excited and you start to create this plan and you don't actually do something immediately, you'll get back caught up. You'll get distracted by your other work commitments, or someone else have a demand from you, or something at home will get you. You get caught up in the normal grind. So I never leave the sight of setting a goal without doing something towards its attainment. Send an email, make a phone call, book a meeting, go get a book, right? Do something specific that moves you towards this immediately. So you want to write some things you can do immediately, and write some little things and some big things. One of the ways to get a really great plan is do something that really commits you in that action. So maybe if you're overweight again, using that same example, maybe what you do is you go in the kitchen and you rip out everything in that kitchen, everything in the refrigerator that you know doesn't belong there. It's not good for you. And then you carry it under your arms delicately and you head for the bathroom. You bring a CD player or an audio tape and you lift up that porcelain goddess and you play the music in the background as you dump the stuff down the toilet and you flush it away forever. Maybe the music you play is "We Are the Champions of the World." I don't know what you do. Do something crazy. Committed act. Do something that commits yourself. Write down your massive action plan and make it very specific things you're going to do. Maybe instead of saying, well, I'll do some research on the internet maybe this week, say on Thursday, I'm going to do 1 hour of research on the internet. I'm going to compare 3 companies to look at to decide where to invest. Or you know what? I'm gonna do exercise for 25 minutes, 5 times a week. Be as specific as possible. I don't know what the specific thing is for you, but do it. And if you can get yourself to not only write something down, but today, go do something that commits you, you're gonna get momentum. You're gonna find yourself saying, this is easy. And everybody around you, including yourself, is gonna know you mean it. See, when we say we're gonna do something, and then we don't do anything, it tells your brain you don't mean it. So let's start right now by coming up with that plan, okay? Write down your massive action plan, and you can come up with all kinds of things. You can always shorten it later. Come up with a brainstorm, a whole list of things that you can shorten if you want to, all the possibilities. So you got a lot of choices, okay? All right, go, do it right now. Pause the CD and let's do it. Okay, I'm assuming that you're now back with me because you've completed your map. In fact, you've got an RPM plan. By the way, what does RPM stand for besides Rapid Planning Method? Well, it's a results-focused, purpose-driven, massive action plan. I mean, that's how you get life results. You don't get it by thinking about it or talking about it or rationalizing it. You get it by getting incredibly focused on the result. You get in the sense of drive from your purpose, and you create a map, a massive action plan that'll get you going to get the result and to make that result a reality. Now, this RPM, by also as a metaphor, obviously, it's like in a car. When you increase the RPMs, you increase the energy, the power to actually produce results. That's what this does as well. So I'll give you a couple examples and let's see how these relate to yours, if there's anything you could learn from these. One of the people here earlier who said that they really want to do these songs but haven't done them in 20 years at the same level anyway, said it's actually very simple. They decided they're going to make sure that they're working on songs every single week, and the action plan is, number 1, within this next week, he's going to put a clipboard by his bed. Step 2, when he opens his eyes every single day, 5 days a week, he's going to spend the first 30 minutes just writing as if he's going to write stuff that's going to go in the trash. So there's no limitation. He's totally in the creative flow, because once you get in that flow, more comes through you. Now, by the way, does this sound almost like a part of his hour of power? You bet. He's starting out with the first half hour for himself, for his greatest passion. By the way, how do you think that'll affect the rest of his day, no matter what else he does? So he said then the next thing he's going to do is on the weekends, he's going to commit 1 hour to review those notes and edit them and actually put them into something that's real. See if he can take from these great ideas and actually produce something of real value. Now, if he does that every single week, his chances of his songwriting exploding are absolutely, I can't say guaranteed, nothing in life is guaranteed, but the opportunity for that to happen, it's going to occur. You know why? He's no longer talking about it. He's no longer just envisioning it. He's begun to plan it, which makes it possible. It's not possible when you're just talking about it. And now he's scheduling it so it's real. That's going to get him the results he wants. And by the way, he has the same thing for his workout schedule. He's got his outcome of what he wants to do. He's going to work out 3 times a week, aerobically, twice anaerobically. He's got the days, and most importantly, he's got starting with today as his first action item, and he's got the time during the day. And he gave himself a little bit of flex factor between 1 and 3, because he knows his schedule flexes, so he's not setting himself up for failure, which we're going to talk about later on. He's setting himself up to win. Another person here, the person who owns the studio, said that he's actually decided his result is he's locked in to complete his first product online by March 1st. What's great about that? It's very specific and it's got a deadline. So I said, how are you going to do it? He said, simple. I have 50 email responses I should have sent out a long time ago from people that already want this kind of product, and I'm going to send it out this week. Number 2, I'm going to send out 100 new emails to potential clients. Number 3, I'm going to take out some banner ads with at least 2 different publications. And then on March 5th, he'll have his second product online, and on April 1st, his third. So he's very specific. And by the way, is this something achievable now? See, it's really hard, even when you get yourself motivated, then unless you got something very specific to focus on, and you know the reasons, you know exactly what to do, you won't do it because you'll get caught up. That's why having this RPM planning process, this rapid planning method, is so valuable. In the beginning, you're kind of weak at it, but after you do it for a while, you'll get really specific, you'll come up with great purposes, and you'll come up with great plans. It's like anything, it's a little muscle. Use it a little bit, it's gonna grow. Another person here described the fact that they were unhappy. What disturbed them, we didn't talk about their example earlier, was being overweight and not being able to change it. They'd lost weight like 15 pounds a year ago. They gained it all back and they've not been able to get rid of it. And so this person said, now the result is really clear. I'm going to produce this result. I'm going to lose these 15 pounds. And most importantly, because I deserve to. I deserve the energy, the feeling, the sexiness, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. They described all things that disturbed them to get the energy. But then this person focused on the result, specifically by when, and he had a powerful purpose. But what's interesting was what they learned when they did their action plan. This person said, you know what, they realized what was missing is in the past when they lost weight, they had a buddy. They had someone to share the experience with. And she became totally certain as she wrote down who her buddy would be that she could then do this. The second step was to pull out that darn Stairmaster and actually plug it in, a unique concept. What does that do again? Convenience, clarity. So many things we don't do just because they're not convenient, because they're not immediate. What's immediate gets our attention. So she's taking that out, making that happen. And then she has a date by which she's going to make this all happen for each of these specific aspects. But I want to point something out here, and we're going to talk about this later on when I talk about really setting yourself up to win, which is one of our principles. But as long as it's being said here, I'll tell you this. Both of these people found something that they know will work because they modeled their successes from the past. You see, for this woman, she was able to lose the weight when she had a buddy, and I'll explain a little more why that worked later on, other than the obvious. The gentleman with the songwriting wrote a song that was on a TV show more than 20 years ago. But he stopped doing this, and he hasn't had that kind of result in his songwriting since then. So what you've really got to be able to look at is there are times in your life in which you've already succeeded. And you need to go back and model what you did and putting together your action plan, because then you'll have certainty it will work. One of the things I do in one of my seminars is I have people write down everything in their life that's here today that once was a dream, once was a goal. Things you may now take for granted, like, the person who's now in your life that you hoped at one point would go out with you, or the job you now take for granted that at one point you were wishing for, or the business that you now own and you're complaining about that one time in your life you would have prayed for. Then I have people write all these things down, and then I say, okay, now, circle one or two that really seemed impossible. Now write down how you made that happen. And what you begin to see is that there's a pattern, and the pattern is similar to what we talked about. Something disturbed them. They may not have been upset. Disturbed sometimes as they saw something that disturbed their status quo. Instead of being comfortable, they wanted more. It didn't have to be painful. Sometimes you're disturbed because you see something great and you want it. That's disturbing too. What's disturbing is you don't have it. That's a good thing. So someone said, I really want my own studio. I don't want to work for somebody else. This is what I want. This is the kind of life. I want to have it on my terms. But then what happens is you get disturbed, you get specific about what you want, you get enough reasons to follow through, you come up with a plan of action. You may do it consciously or unconsciously, and you get the psychology together, make it happen, you take massive action, you get results. But then we forget how we did this stuff. And then what happens is pretty soon there's a big gap between where we are and where we want to be, because it's natural that once you achieve something, you want more. So you want to make sure you get your plan here, create a little map. Hopefully these ideas have triggered you a bit. And remember, if you want to take some action on something, like you want to master your health, then get a coach. We got coaches here. Get the Living Health product. Look at something that will guide you step by step, day by day. The more specific the coaching, the more powerful you're going to be to follow through. And if there's someone physically there to follow up with you, then you can't make excuses because there's somebody else you're talking to other than yourself. It's so easy to talk yourself out of anything. But when you have a result there, you got to make happen, it changes. So if you don't get a